researching furniture or decorative arts very often proves to be much more difficult than researching paintings, as most of the time, even wonderful works of art are anonymous and very briefly described in the old inventories. And there is also another issue. Works from the domain of decorative arts are often considered secondary to fine arts. Art is art. Bernini designed furniture, Piranesi too, Picasso produced ceramics, and Matisse conceived tapestries.
Sotheby's is the temporary custodian of some of the world's most rare, remarkable and coveted art and objects. In each episode, we'll be exploring the significance and journey of an extraordinary work told by those who know it best. This is The Specialist. On today's episode, a story of friendship and detective work, the mission to reunite a treasured pair of cabinets separated for over 300 years, and to return them to their place of origin. Commissioned by the noble Della Rovere family and featuring their ancestral coat of arms, the cabinets caught the attention of Mario Tavella. Mario is chairman of Sotheby's Europe and president of Sotheby's France, and is passionate about brokering sales of French and Italian decorative art with prestigious international institutions. Let's join Mario now with more.
The Della Rovere family was one of the most illuminated family of Italian Renaissance, and it is thought, maybe romantically, that the inter-twin branches celebrated the wedding of Francesco Maria II della Rovere, the Duke of Urbino, and his cousin and second wife Livia, who was also a member of the Della Rovere family. The set of 4 cabinets included a cabinet resting on another cabinet, like a base, and then there were 3 other smaller ones. Each of them bore the arms of the Della Rovere family, surmounted by the ducal crown and with the collar of the Order of the Golden Fleece. Today, we will talk really only about the first one, the only one which has survived intact. Its lavish base or lower part was thought to be lost, and I found it. This finding has permitted us to reconstruct in more detail the story of this extraordinary set of furniture, which in my opinion is one of the most exquisite examples of cabinetry ever made for a European court. From archival sources, which have been researched by other colleagues and professors in the past, we know that these cabinets were commissioned between 1596 and 1599 by the Duke of Urbino for his ducal palace in Urbino. He was a great patron of the arts and a generous protector of artists and craftsmen. The Duke commissioned the set from the cabinet maker Giorgio Tedesco and the ivory engraver Giulio Lupi, although sadly, we don't have much more information on these 2 very skilled craftsmen. Cabinets, which were also called studioli or monetieri, were very common in the Renaissance and Baroque periods. They were conceived with many little drawers and secret compartments to hold and hide jewels, coins, documents, and they usually moved with their owners. The courts at that time moved constantly from one palace to the other. One has to think that Urbino was one of the most important artistic and cultural centers in Italy since the 15th century. This dukedom did not have territorial ambitions. They wanted really to create a reputation for artistic patronage. To give you an example, the Della Rovere family gave to the church not 1 but 2 popes, Sisto IV, responsible for the Sixtine Chapel in Rome, and Julius II, responsible for starting St. Peter's Basilica as we know it today. Painters like Piero della Francesca, Titian, Dosso Dossi, and Barocci worked at their court, not to mention Raphael, who was born in Urbino. We have quite a bit of information on this set, but nevertheless, still many gaps have to be filled. Sadly, Francesco Maria della Rovere, the Duke of Urbino, died in 1631 without a male heir. He had a son, but he died. And there is a very moving letter where he bequeaths all his most precious possessions to his beloved granddaughter, Vittoria della Rovere, who represented the last member of the family. Marrying Ferdinando II de' Medici, Vittoria became Grand Duchess of Tuscany, and these cabinets followed her to Palazzo Pitti in Florence. Victoria sadly decided to sacrifice some of these cabinets, at least 2, to make new pieces of furniture by the end of 1667, but luckily she did not dare to alter the 2 most important pieces of the set, our cabinet, the upper part and the lower part, and a table which we sold at auction in 2001, which is now in a private American collection. Documents prove the presence of these pieces in her private apartments at Palazzo Pitti. After her death, they were inherited by her second son, Cardinal Francesco Maria, in 1694, and it is at that point that we start to lose track of this furniture until they reappear in the 20th century at auction. The studiolo, or the upper part of our cabinet, came on the UK market in the late 90s, and it was acquired through a dealer by the Galleria Nazionale delle Marche in 1999. But at that time, nobody knew that the cabinet was originally conceived with a lower section. The lower rediscovered part, also known by the name Credenza, was brought to my attention in 2011 by a private European collector who didn't know what he had really, and it took me almost 13 years to study and to reunite the 2 pieces. In 2010, we sold for 1 million a stunning trestle table from the same series. The image of that table must have caught the attention of the owner of the lower part of our cabinet, because he wrote to me, "I clearly remember the day when I saw the images and I jumped from my chair. But then everything went quiet for a few years until the owner started to consider the sale of it in 2018. Then I knew I had the task to deepen my knowledge really on the subject. I have to confess it was a very painful process, made even more complicated by the fact that the rediscovered cabinet that I went to see, which was originally conceived, as I said, as the bottom section of the Urbino cabinet, presented itself as the upper part of another cabinet. So it was very confusing. Then the cabinet arrived at Sotheby's Paris in September 2011 for inspection, and I measured and I analyzed the woods with the help of Simone Chiarugi, a famous restorer from Florence. And I started to think that our finding could have been the matching lost base of the cabinet already in the Urbino Palace. I knew that to prove my assumptions, I had to go to inspect their cabinets next 2 hours. I drove to Urbino in June 2020. At 9 a.m., I was the first one to enter the Palazzo Ducale. I went to the room where the Urbino cabinet was preserved, and we finally tried the upper and the lower parts together, and they perfectly fit like a Cinderella shoe. When I saw the 2 pieces reunited, of course, I felt so good, and yes, also very proud. Experts have an ego, you know. My mission was now to convince the museums and the Italian state to buy it and to reunite the 2 pieces. And I was lucky to have met the enlightened director of the Galleria Nazionale delle Marche, Dr. Luca Gallo, who understood the importance of these findings and therefore encouraged the Italian state to buy it. I immediately thought of the vendor at the same time, with whom I had started to exchange regularly. One day, in May 2022, the vendor wrote to me a WhatsApp to announce that a very bad cancer had hit him, a type which rarely gives hope. I felt so bad for a gentleman I only met twice in my life. But by then, something had made our relation really strong, the desire to reunite the 2 pieces. The owner was able to go and to sign the sale and see the reunited pieces in December 2023 in Urbino. We promised each other we would go back again together, but he sadly passed away in July 2024. I knew I had done something good for him, for his children, and of course for the Italian heritage. I had accomplished my mission. There are many factors, of course, which motivated me in persevering with the research of these pieces. The intrinsic beauty of the inlaid decoration, of course, the illustrious provenance, and of course the promise I made to our client. But perhaps the most compelling factor is the desire to leave a legacy. That is why I often like to publish my personal findings in academic publications. And whenever I can, I really make an effort to sell major works of art to public institutions. I know it is not good for business as you subtract them from the market, but you give them to eternity. And the idea that by doing that, I leave somehow a personal legacy pleases me a lot. It is my personal contribution to the history of art. In this case, to see the two cabinets reunited in the splendid Palazzo Urbino, so charged with history and the trove of masterpieces, and for which the cabinet were conceived, made me even prouder and very emotional. And I do believe that certain findings do not happen by chance. It had to be.
Thank you for joining us on The Specialist. This has been brought to you by Sotheby's Financial Services. SFS offers asset-based loans to unlock the value of your fine art, automobiles, and other luxury collectibles. To step further into the world of Sotheby's, visit any one of our galleries, which are open to the public. Go to sotheby's.com to find out more.